No outono de 1944, já possuíam uma máquina capaz de gerar a propulsão desejada, de controlar sua trajetória e de viajar milhares de quilômetros até o alvo. O V-2 estava pronto para cumprir sua terrível função.
Werner von Braun was aware that his V-2 technology made him a prized pig in the world of warfare. As Allied troops approached, he carefully orchestrated his surrender to the Americans.
And there's a very pragmatic decision that we want to be captured by the Americans, because in the post-war world, that's the environment that we would see ourselves working in, and this is the country that would take our technology and run with it. So there was a quite explicit plan to, get the V2s disassembled and get as many parts as they could and get as many of their people heading in the direction that they knew the American army was, so they would be surrendering to the right side.
That was also the time when the designer of Soviet rockets, Sergei Korolev, started working on the project of his lifetime. It was the construction of the R-7 missile, which was destined to become the core of the Soviet agenda of peaceful space exploration. However, the talk back then focused on a new war.
On August the 29th, 1949, the first Soviet nuclear bomb was successfully tested on the Kazakh steppe at an officially built testing site. Physicist Otto Hahn, a 1944 Nobel Prize winner, said the Soviet bomb was good news because it meant the United States could only use their bomb at risk of nuclear war.
The possibility of a nuclear war in which some will survive.
You are the target of those who would trample the liberties of free men. You are in the crosshairs of the bomb sight. An enemy is centering on you, the United States of America.
On October 24th, 1946, the V-2 carrying Holliday's special camera roared 65 miles into the New Mexico sky. The grainy black and white images within, the first ever taken of our planet from space, became a global phenomenon. Never before had human beings seen their world from this height. The curvature of the Earth was clearly visible, as were thick clouds over the American West.
The von Braun team is charged with building a second-generation V-2 called the Redstone, designed to carry a nuclear bomb 200 miles.
Blossom Flight number 1 carried a 9-pound rhesus monkey named Albert, the first animal astronaut. Unfortunately, telemetry showed that Albert probably died before launch, and none of his later animal colleagues survived later flights in the Blossom series due to recovery failures.
El gran paracaigudes blanc va aparèixer 15 minuts després de l'enlairament i la càpsula va aterrar amb els dos animals a dins. Tota la gent del centre espacial va córrer cap al punt d'aterratge. Es veien dues cares canines rere el vidre. La Desi i l'Atzigan eren vives.
Eisenhower announces the U.S. will launch a scientific satellite as part of IGY. Within days, the Soviet Union announces it too will launch a scientific satellite during IGY.
In less than a month, and it weighed 84 kilos. Its code name was PS-1, or Elementary Satellite 1. It had 2 radio transmitters for various frequencies. The size of radio waves were supposed to be monitored at the Baikonur to tell the temperature and the pressure inside the device. The first satellite stayed there in orbit for 92 days. By the time it was burned down re-entering the atmosphere, there was the second Soviet device flying around.
Called Sputnik, it sparks off panic in Cold War America.
They just simply didn't believe it. They thought of the Soviet Union at the time as being a country that couldn't build a refrigerator, let alone a satellite.
This thing going over top of us every 90 minutes, what can it do? Can it take pictures of us? Can it drop an atomic bomb on us?
30 years ago, we had 6 times as many scientists and engineers as the Soviet Union. Now their colleges are turning out twice as many technical people this year as ours are.
No hi havia control de temperatura. Només un conducte de ventilació. La laica estava condemnada, ja que el satèl·lit no havia de tornar a la Terra. Però va morir de sobreescalfament.
Federal funding for American science and education is also increased to better compete with the Russians.
Eisenhower's response is to establish an American space program, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, or NASA. Space exploration becomes a Cold War race between superpowers.
Ranger was designed simply to hit the moon. Before it crashed into its lunar impact point, it would send back to Earth close-up TV pictures of a portion of the moon's surface. The first successful Ranger reached a small lunar sea, since renamed Mare Cognitum, the sea that has become known.
Confident as ever, Gagarin shouted, "Pyakali! Let's go," as he began a journey that would take him right around the Earth and back again.
Minutes after launch, Alan Shepard reaches an apogee of 116 miles and becomes America's first man in space.
What a beautiful view. Cloud cover over Florida, 3 to 4 tenths near the eastern coast.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills, because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win, and the others too. Finally, in a field where the United States and the Soviet Union have a special capacity, in the field of space, there is room for new cooperation, for further joint efforts in the regulation and exploration of space. I include among these possibilities a joint expedition to the moon.
Because of the cramped confines of the spacecraft, the crew does not wear spacesuits. This factor would have caused certain death for the crew in the event of cabin depressurization, but the Soviets insist on beating the Americans to the milestone of the first multi-person flight.
Gemini 3 flies 2 Americans in space for the first time. Astronauts Grissom and Young practice changing altitude and orbit, critical maneuvers on a trip to the moon.
It was a great step forward, and it turned out to be really a magnificent flight.
Он ушел из жизни 14 января 1966 Во время хирургической операции у гениального конструктора остановилось сердце.
Some of the most famous astronauts ever are among the new 9.
Jim Lovell, Ed White, and Neil Armstrong.
10 manned Gemini missions are planned to accomplish 3 crucial objectives: docking 2 spacecraft together in orbit, spacewalking, and surviving long durations in space.
February 3rd, 1966. Luna 9 makes a soft landing on the lunar surface, and Luna 10 orbits the moon, providing good photographs.
A spark from the capsule's wiring starts a fire, killing all 3 astronauts within 30 seconds.
We had no idea what the effect of high oxygen content environments would do as far as burning goes, and we learned the hard way.
Vladimir Komarov is given a state funeral and buried in the Kremlin wall. It would be another 18 months until a cosmonaut would fly in space again.
One was to unveil the plaque that was on the landing gear.
Dear men from the planet Earth, first set foot upon the moon, July 1969,
We came in peace for all mankind. That statement really, to me, was a very symbolic one of not just our mission, but all of the Apollo effort.
I'm going to step off the limb now. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Go ahead, Mr. President. This is Houston out.
Hello, Neil and Buzz. I'm talking to you by telephone from the Oval Room at the White House. And this certainly has to be the most historic telephone call ever made. I just can't tell you how proud we all are of what you... For every American, this has to be the proudest day of our lives. And for people all over the world.
Very, very fine grained as you get close to it. It's almost like a powder.
And the world would join in celebration of this great human achievement as the crew of Apollo 11 toured their own planet to rapturous jubilation and collective awe everywhere.
We were looking at all this cheering, and certainly there was a sense that the world was thinking that, yeah, we did.
It's only 11 years since Alan Shepard became the first American in space, and John Kennedy challenged the U.S. to go to the moon. Now, Apollo 17 is the end of an era.
It's like breaking off a love affair. You've had a marvelous time, but now it's time to bring that relationship to an end.
3, 2, 1, ignition. Burn away, Houston. Vector good. Next start.